Okay, we're going to be converting fractions to decimals. We're just deal with 5 most basic fractions that most people deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially in areas of cooking, measuring, constructing, anything that deals with fractions. Pretty much, these are the main fractions that we deal with day-to-day. So 1/5, let's take a look at 1/5. So you're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So the numerator is going to go basically in the middle, if you will. 5, that's your divisor, that's your denominator, that's going to go on the outside. You can divide 5 into 1. Obviously 5 cannot go into 1, right? So that's one big fat 0, right? However, because this is a fraction, it's also considered a decimal. It's part of a whole number. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your decimal here where it normally goes after a whole number. Add a 0. It's not going to change the value at all. Also bring up your decimal straight up here. And then now we can try to divide it once more. 5 can't go into 1, but 5 can go into 10. 5 can go into 10 2 times. And what is 5 times 2? It's 10. Exactly 10. And because it equals to a 0 at the end, that's going to be 0.2. So 1/2 equals 0.2, or the correct way to say this is 2/10. This is in the tenths place. If we were to go back to the fraction, the correct way of reading that would be 0 and 2/10. So this is 0 and 2/10. It's in the tenths place. Okay, so if you think about it, 2/10, 2/10, right? There's the 2, there's the tenths. If we put that in lowest terms, divide them both by 2, we'll see that equals 1/5 again. So it goes back to 1/5. So you see again, 1/5 equals 0 and 2/10, or just 2/10. 1/4. Divide the 1 by the 4. The 1 goes in the middle. The 4 goes on the outside. It's your divisor. Can 4 go into 1? No. 0. However, remember, this is your decimal. Bring up your decimal, and it goes into 10 2 times, correct? And then when you multiply that, you get 8. Subtract the difference, 2. Now we need to get to a 0. We can't stop once we get to a 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a 0 here. Again, it doesn't change the value of the number, doesn't make it bigger, just basically defines it a bit more. Bring it down. 4 goes into 20 5 times. Goes in evenly. And that's it. So 1/4 equals 0 and 25 hundredths. Some would say 0.25 or 0 and 25 hundredths. If you were to read this again, it's 25. So I typically read it like this: 0 and 25 hundredths. Because the 5 is in the hundredths place. That's why we read it the hundredths. So if you read it as a fraction, you see it says 25 over hundredths. And in lowest terms, if you were to simplify that, if you divide this by 25, divide this by 25, you get 1/4. You go back to the main fraction. So again, 1/4 equals 25 hundredths, or 0.25. Keep moving. On to 1/3. 1, divide by 3. Can 3 go to 1? Nope. 0. Put a decimal. Add the 0 there. Bring the decimal straight up. How many times can 3 go into 10? 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract the difference. 1. And you can see that there's no 0 here. So you're going to have to add another 0. Bring it straight down. And of course you notice the same thing. It's 10 all over again. And you come up with the same issue. So what's going to end up happening is this is going to end up repeating. It's never going to get to the end. So 1/3 equals 0.3, but the 3 repeats. So what we do there is we put a repeating bar over the first digit that repeats. In this case, it's just the 3. The 3 repeats. We put a little repeating bar there to indicate that's going to repeat on and on and on and on. Okay, so that's going to be your decimal version of that. We'll talk later about how you could take repeating decimals and convert them back to fractions. Okay, 1/2. 1 divided by 2. 2 can't go into 1, 0 times. Add a decimal. 0, bring up the decimal. 2 goes into 10 5 times. And it goes in evenly. Okay, and this is 5/10. So 1/2 equals 5/10. And if you think about it, 5/10 in lowest terms would equal 1/2. Okay, last but not least, 1/8. 1/8 is a little bit more of a work. A few more decimals. 8 can't go into 1. 0. Add decimal, bring the decimal up. We're going to add a 0. Okay, can 8 go into 10? Yes, once. Subtract. Okay, we see it doesn't go in evenly. There's a 2 there, so we're going to have to add another 0. Bring it straight down. How many times can 8 go into 20? 2 times. Subtract that. 2 times 8 is 16. 20 minus 16 is 4. Again, it's not 0, so we have to keep going. Add a 0. Bring that down. How many times can 8 go into 40? It goes in 5 times. And in this case, it goes in evenly, which is great because we are at the end of that page. And so 1/8 equals 0.125, and the correct way of saying that would be 0 and 125 thousandths. So it's actually in the thousandths place, this last decimal. Okay, and again, this would be 125 over 1,000 because it's in the thousandths place. And if you were to simplify, if you divide this by 125 and divide this by 125, you'll get 1/8. Okay, you can divide by 25 by 25. You'll get, I believe it's 5 over 40, and then you would convert that down to 1/8, okay, or to simplify it. That's basically it. That's converting fractions to decimals. I know that was kind of quick, but those are your most basic fractions that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.